Roy Moore's out with this new video message. He still refuses to concede. Let's look at it.
I want to thank all of you who have stood with me in this very important battle for the future of our country. We are indeed in a struggle to preserve our republic, our civilization, and our religion, and to set free a suffering humanity. And the battle rages on. In this race, we have not received the final count to include military and provisional ballots. This has been a very close race, and we are awaiting certification by the Secretary of State.
Secretary of State did an interview last night saying he didn't think that would change anything, but, you know, if you want to go through all of this. I mean, listen, he certainly doesn't want to seem like he wants to ride off in the sunset on sassy as horse, does he?
Well, he's been defying reality his whole career as a judge and as a politician. But, you know, I must say that I think one thing I find hardening about the race is that this is a time that is so polarized, and a time when there are, you know, these enormous accusations against news institutions and debate about whether there are any common facts for the country. And I thought that this election actually showed that facts do matter. I mean, that, you know, it was because of some tremendous Washington Post reporting that was unassailable that changed the outcome of this race. And it showed that for all these assaults on truth, actually facts do matter. And then in the same way, our national conversation is dominated by some similar reporting in the New York Times about Harvey Weinstein. That even in 2017, with this polarization, at some level, great reporting and facts do matter.
Yeah, absolutely. And you see, I mean, even as every single day, we wonder who's next when you mention Harvey Weinstein, when it comes to that particular issue. But Frank, let's talk a little bit more about what Nick just said and facts and reporting, because you're out with a new column on the Alabama race. And just let me read a part of it. You said Alabamians provided a partial answer on Tuesday showing that there are limits to what voters will tolerate in terms of lies they'll believe, the vices they'll ignore, and the distance they'll stray from civilized norms. Moore, an accused child molester who sugarcoated slavery and seemed intent on some sort of extreme Christian theocracy, was simply too far. I was reading this morning on the airplane. I was exhausted and I wanted to take a nap, but I couldn't stop reading your column because I found it fascinating, and I think you're right. Was a line drawn last night? And what does that mean for President Trump, who continues to tweet out inappropriate things?
Well, it did feel to me like a line was drawn last night. I think most of us have lived through this first year, and I do mean most Americans have lived through this first year of the Trump presidency, and we have seen him behave in office in a way that we haven't seen a president behave before. We've seen him, act in indecent ways. We've seen him seem to privilege himself and his fellow plutocrats over everyone else. And we've wondered, at what point is there a pushback? At what point do we see evidence that Americans are saying we won't stand for that? And I think it is just so interesting and so encouraging that pushback came from Alabama, which, if you were making a list of the reddest states in the country, Alabama would be at or near the top of that list. And I think this outcome says that, yes, Roy Moore was a step too far, but that Roy Moore is a mirror and a sort of proxy for Trumpism was also a step too far. I mean, Donald Trump put his political muscle, late, but he did so behind this candidacy. It didn't make a difference, and I think it's impossible not to see him as pretty seriously diminished by what happened in Alabama.
Good.
Let's also, though, acknowledge that the pushback, is fairly modest in the sense that what it shows is that if you have an unpopular Republican who has a history of molesting 14-year-old girls, then that person may lose a squeaker. Well, at the end of the day, it was astonishing to me that white women still voted by 29 percentage points for Moore.
Well, Doug Jones did better with women than Democrats traditionally do in Alabama. Roy Moore, it's hard to imagine a more unacceptable candidate. But we're talking about a state that went for Donald Trump by 30 points. I went back and looked at other Senate races, recent gubernatorial races, going back the last 2 decades, almost always the Republican wins by something like 30 points. So it's impossible not to look at that sort of margin and at the fact that Doug Jones won and say this is about, yes, what a flawed candidate, flawed is too soft a word for it, Roy Moore is, but I think it's about things that are even bigger than that.